For decades, there was a simple promise at the heart of the American dream. Study hard, get a good job, work consistently, save your money, and eventually, life would become easier. That promise shaped entire generations. Parents repeated it to their children. Schools reinforced it. Politicians celebrated it. Financial advisors built careers around it. But something strange has happened over the last few years. Millions of people followed every rule they were told to follow. They earned degrees. They built careers. They worked overtime. They avoided unnecessary risks. And yet, despite doing everything right, many of them feel further behind than ever before. The numbers suggest the economy is thriving. Stock markets continue reaching new highs. Corporate profits remain near record levels. Home values have exploded. Artificial intelligence is creating billion-dollar companies almost overnight. On paper, this should be one of the most prosperous periods in modern history. Yet surveys continue showing the same disturbing trend. A growing number of people feel financially trapped, not because they're unemployed, not because they're reckless, but because the cost of participating in normal life keeps rising faster than their ability to keep up. And nowhere is this more visible than in the middle class, because the biggest financial problem facing the average family today isn't poverty. It's the feeling of running faster every year just to stay in the exact same place. Imagine a family earning $120,000 annually. 20 years ago, that income would have provided a comfortable lifestyle, a decent home, reliable transportation, family vacations, retirement savings, college funds, financial breathing room. Today, that same family often feels squeezed from every direction. Mortgage payments are higher. Insurance premiums are higher. Healthcare costs are higher. Food prices are higher. Education costs are higher. Even basic entertainment has become more expensive. Streaming subscriptions, internet bills, phone plans, everything costs more. The result is a financial treadmill. Income rises, expenses rise faster, and despite earning more dollars than ever before, many households feel poorer. This is one of the most confusing economic realities of our time. People aren't imagining the pressure, but they're also not technically wrong when they hear economists say the economy is strong. Both things can be true at the same time. The economy can be booming, and millions of people can still feel left behind. The reason comes down to one simple question: what exactly is growing? Because when most headlines talk about economic growth, they're usually talking about assets. Stocks, real estate, businesses, investments. Things owned disproportionately by wealthier households. If a stock portfolio rises by $100,000 this year, that's economic growth. If a home increases in value by $200,000, that's economic growth. If a company's market value jumps by billions, that's economic growth. But none of those gains necessarily improve daily life for someone struggling to pay rent. This creates a hidden divide. One economy exists for asset owners. Another economy exists for wage earners. The first economy benefits from rising prices. The second economy suffers because of them. When stock prices rise, investors celebrate. When housing prices rise, homeowners celebrate. But renters face higher costs. First-time buyers get pushed further away from ownership. The same event creates winners and losers simultaneously. That's why two neighbors can experience the exact same economy completely differently. One sees opportunity, the other sees obstacles, and the gap keeps widening. The wealthiest households own most of the assets, which means they receive most of the benefits when those assets appreciate. Meanwhile, people whose wealth depends almost entirely on their paycheck don't experience the same gains. Their income grows slowly. Their expenses grow quickly. And the difference compounds year after year. This is where many people become confused. They see headlines about record wealth. Then they look at their own bank account. The two realities don't match. That's because national wealth isn't distributed evenly. Imagine 10 people sitting around a table. 9 of them receive $1. One person receives $91. Together, they received $100. Technically, the average person got $10. But that's not what actually happened. The average hides the reality. And that's exactly what happens when people discuss the economy. The averages look incredible. The experiences often don't. Now, let's talk about debt. Because debt has quietly become the bridge between income and reality. Many families aren't maintaining their lifestyle because wages increased enough. They're maintaining it because borrowing became easier. Credit cards, auto loans, personal loans, buy now, pay later programs. Debt fills the gap between what people earn and what life costs. At first, this seems manageable. A few $100s here, a few $1,000s there. But eventually, the math becomes impossible. Interest compounds, balances grow, monthly payments increase. And suddenly, a family isn't just paying for today's expenses, they're paying for yesterday's expenses too. This creates a dangerous cycle. Income pays old debt. New debt covers current expenses. Savings disappear. Financial flexibility vanishes. And emergencies become disasters. One unexpected medical bill. One job loss. One major repair. That's all it takes, because many households no longer have enough margin for mistakes. And this is perhaps the biggest difference between wealthy households and everyone else. Wealth creates options. Debt removes them. A wealthy family faces a crisis and writes a check. A heavily indebted family faces the same crisis and falls deeper into a hole. Over time, these small differences create enormous outcomes. The rich don't simply earn more. They recover faster. They invest more. They compound more. And they avoid expensive financial mistakes because they can afford alternatives. Meanwhile, the middle class faces increasing pressure from every direction. Housing consumes a larger share of income. Healthcare consumes a larger share of income. Education consumes a larger share of income. Transportation consumes a larger share of income. The result isn't sudden collapse. It's gradual exhaustion. People still go to work, still pay bills, still move forward. But every year feels slightly harder than the year before. That's why so many people feel disconnected from economic headlines. The headlines describe the economy from 30,000 feet. Families experience it from ground level. And ground level tells a different story. At ground level, wealth feels concentrated. At ground level, housing feels unaffordable. At ground level, savings feel impossible. At ground level, retirement feels further away. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. The economy isn't one thing. It's millions of individual experiences happening simultaneously. For some people, this is an era of extraordinary prosperity. For others, it's an era of constant financial stress. Neither side is wrong. They're simply standing in different places. The investor sees record highs. The renter sees record costs. The homeowner sees growing equity. The buyer sees a shrinking dream. The executive sees opportunity. The worker sees inflation. Same country, same economy, completely different realities. And until more people understand that distinction, the disconnect will continue. Because the biggest economic story of our time isn't whether the economy is growing. It's who that growth is actually reaching. That's the question hidden behind every record stock market high, every soaring home price, every headline celebrating economic strength. Not whether wealth is being created, but who is keeping it, and who is being left behind. But what if the divide goes even deeper than rising costs? Because the real transformation happening inside the economy isn't just about inflation, it's about ownership. For most of the 20th century, income was the primary engine of financial progress. People worked, they earned, they saved, and slowly they built wealth. Today, that formula is becoming less effective, because income and wealth are no longer growing at the same speed. In many cases, wealth is growing much faster. And wealth comes from ownership. Ownership of stocks, ownership of businesses, ownership of real estate, ownership of intellectual property, ownership of technology. The modern economy increasingly rewards people who own things, not just people who do things. Think about two individuals. Both earn the same salary, both work 40 hours a week, both receive similar annual raises, but one invests consistently into assets. The other spends nearly everything just to keep up with rising costs. 10 years later, their lives look completely different. Not because one worked harder, but because one owned assets that continued working after the workday ended. This is the hidden force behind much of today's wealth gap. Money earned through labor is usually linear. You work 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. But money earned through ownership is different. A stock can rise while you sleep. A business can generate revenue while you're on vacation. A property can appreciate without you lifting a finger. Ownership allows wealth to compound. And compounding is one of the most powerful forces in economics. The challenge is that millions of families are so focused on surviving the present that they never get the opportunity to participate in that compounding process. They're paying rent, paying bills, paying debt, paying for necessities. Every dollar already has a job before it arrives. Meanwhile, asset owners are buying more assets, and those assets are generating even more wealth. This creates a feedback loop. Wealth creates more ownership. Ownership creates more wealth. And the cycle repeats itself. That's why economic inequality often grows faster during periods of strong economic growth. Because growth doesn't automatically